So thank you for joining us live today with the amazing FBA 10K Collective podcast interviews that we do, interviewing experts and practitioners of the art of e-commerce. They've got a practitioner. We're going to talk about direct-to-consumer tactics and also the whole direct-to-consumer versus Amazon bait, always an interesting one for e-commerce sellers, with my new friend Adam Wright from Super Green Tonic. So Adam, welcome to the show. Good to have you on live with us.
Yeah, cheers, Michael. Great to be here.
Yeah, and you're equipped with a proper microphone, I see. Rode that looks absolutely giant from that angle, but I can say as an owner of one of those myself, they are bulky things, but very good quality. So you'll be coming to us nice and crisp. So if you're watching live with us, thanks for joining us, or if you're watching on the replay as well, do ask any questions you got for Adam. If you ask them live, we can weave them into the podcast, which we'll record live in a second. If you have them on the flip side, if you're catching us on the flip side, i.e. after the live, then do pop in your comments or questions, and I or Adam will be delighted to pop in and find them on the various different channels. So Adam, you and I could be busy. Got to check YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. It's also
Right.
Facebook, my personal channel. What else is it? Amazing FBA group, a couple of thousand people plus there, and what else have I missed? Oh yeah, LinkedIn. So lots of places
Nice.
people are watching us. So if you're on one of those things, do give us a like or a love, obviously, as well. Always helpful to keep, giving us the incentive to get this information out to you. Right then, so assuming no further questions for the moment for anyone live, doesn't look like we've got any coming in. Adam, are you good to jump in and get recording the podcast?
Yes, let's go.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Let's do this thing there. Right then, camera back to me. And here we go. Ladles and jelly spoons, boys and girls, welcome back to the 10K Collective podcast, the place to be for 6, 7, and 8-figure Amazon sellers, a subset of the amazing FBA podcast family for Amazon sellers in general. My name is Michael Wiesen. I'm the host of the podcast and, of course, an e-commerce seller and consultant myself. Today, we are talking about blogging and writing to develop a D2C audience. Nice specific tactical stuff here. We're talking with Adam Wright, who is the CEO and founder of Super Green Tonic, a D2C greens powder brand, and basically an e-commerce owner, not really running an agency or anything. So a bit of a shocking change from the usual people we have on as guests, a proper e-commerce operator. So first of all, Adam, warm welcome to the show. Thanks so much for jumping on with us.
No, thanks, Michael. It's great to be here.
Excellent. So we're going to plunge straight in. We can get a bit of background about you. But first of all, got to ask the question, why start with direct-to-consumer, not Amazon? That's obviously almost a controversial choice in the sort of orthodoxy of Amazon sellers. So what led you down that path?
To be honest, I didn't have much choice initially because I'm actually, well, you can tell I'm from the UK, but I'm actually living in Penang in Malaysia. So actually, when I tried to set up on Amazon, they wouldn't let me. I was in a loop of we can't verify who you are. You're a British guy living in Malaysia with a Hong Kong company. It's not going to happen. So in the end, I sort of gave up even trying to go on Amazon, even though I wanted to really give it a go. And I started just doing e-com with a WooCommerce store.
So Amazon kind of shot themselves in the foot there, I suppose. So they'll have to say that trying to make sense of, so you're British and you've got a Hong Kong company, but you live in Penang. And where were you trying to sell to? Were you trying to sell to the
in
US?
The US.
Just to make it exciting. I can kind of see that you know, between 4 different jurisdictions. In fact, you got three continents in there and 4 jurisdictions. That I can see why they might find that a bit much. But presumably WooCommerce didn't. So interesting. And WooCommerce, obviously, quite a well-known platform, but not as sort of famous as Shopify. I think Shopify sort of blew up during the pandemic phase, and it's not a phrase. So why we ought to get into why that platform as well. Really, I'm always wary of platform debates because everyone can kind of miss the points. But what was your personal choice about that?
Well, actually, my background is with web development. So I do have experience there. So, and I've actually used WooCommerce in the past. So that's actually what made me think, well, you know, I can use that platform. I can develop. In fact, I've developed all of the e-com site myself. So that meant that I could just jump in and I could sort of basically tweak it and basically update it and create it from scratch. And so the cost for doing that was really, really low. With Shopify, I was tempted to use the platform, but when I set up my merchant account, they didn't support it any longer. So again, I was sort of really pushed in the direction of using WooCommerce. So yeah,
Yeah, interesting. So it sounds like a lot of your choices have been developed by um, other people's inflexibility, I guess, which is interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm not sure what to
for
say about
sure.
that except to chat to the guys at Shopify and say, look, guys, you're losing sales because of this rigidity. Um,
Yeah,
so tell me a bit about, I mean, so without going down too much of a rabbit hole here, but it is a really important question that comes up. Some people get very partisan, like everyone's like Shopify is the best thing ever. My sort of
yeah,
podcast partner with the e-commerce leader, which is another one of the sort of sister podcasts to this, Jason Miles is a massive Shopify fan. Find WordPress pretty painful. Other people swear by WordPress. Some people are all about Magento. Some people are WooCommerce. So what? I guess you've got a bit of a unique perspective because you have that development background. What's your thoughts if you didn't
yeah.
have that development background? How usable would WooCommerce be for the average internet
Mm,
marketing savvy but not development type person to set
yeah.
up themselves?
I mean, both platforms they've got the pros and cons, of course. With WooCommerce, you can set up, and it's cheaper to set up, but you have to get your hands dirty a bit with the platform. With Shopify, it's a lot easier to use. You can jump in, select templates, etc. You can use the marketplace to actually get the sort of the extra plugins you need, but you will have to pay for them. So if you want to start off really quickly and you're not technical, I would say Shopify. If you have a bit of technical knowledge and you're happy with, let's say, getting your hands dirty a bit and sort of tweaking with the platform, then you can use sort of WooCommerce. But the other thing is, and I know we'll talk about this a bit later, is that I do a lot of blogging. So I was drawn to WordPress anyway because of the sort of the user friendliness of the blogging platform or publishing platform. Shopify, I'll be honest, I heard a lot of sort of negative things in terms of the blogging part of the platform. But for me, it was mostly that I was pushed in the direction of WooCommerce, but I sort of feel fairly comfortable with the platform.
Yeah, interesting. I guess there's always a way where you could use WordPress as an apparently
Mm,
a site to the consumer that looks like
yeah,
it's the same branding and similar user experience and same menus and other things like that. But you could have a sort of WordPress plot for the blogging and a Shopify for
yeah,
the back end. I mean, is that something that sounds usable or doable to you? I say this is somebody who hasn't
yeah,
done that, by the way, just to be
yeah.
clear.
You could do that. I mean, you could set up a subdomain, so you could have shop dot whatever your brand is.com, and you can have, say, um, brandx.com is your front end sort of platform. It really depends. I mean, my product's a single product site, so with WooCommerce, you do have to play around with it to sort of perform like a single product. Whereas the traditional WooCommerce site is a multi-product store like you would see on Shopify.
Yeah, okay. So I guess it slightly depends on how many products you've got, and
Yeah,
yeah, interesting. So it almost feels like you tried to be quite conventional and you ended up being quite different because of who you are.
yeah,
That kind of worked out. So in other words, you couldn't go to Amazon because of the verification, which to be fair to them, it sounds quite complicated life you're leading there. I mean, a very much a digital
yeah,
nomad thing, I guess. But and then Shopify didn't
yeah,
support the merchant account, but then WooCommerce happened to fit the fact that you're quite comfortable with development. So yeah, very
yeah,
interesting. And these are the sorts of ways of thinking that people talk through. One thing I would say is, if you're talking to various people in the D2C world, again, not my personal experience, but I think switching platforms is pretty damn painful. So I guess it is one of those
yeah,
things you want to make a decision at the start that's going to work for you and keep going, right?
yeah,
So you mentioned blogging. So let's get into the main sort of thrust of this. We're talking about how to actually get traffic, but I think the platform discussion and the whole how did you end up thing is kind of part and parcel of that, isn't it? Because it's all about where
yeah.
you end up. You're in a corner of the internet. You've got a thing to sell. Now, how on
Mm.
earth do you show it to people and provide, how do you get them to show up in the first place? So tell us about your traffic strategy, because obviously you've got that kind of, you know, crickets phenomenon with your own D2C, haven't you? On Amazon, you've got a competition, overload, but at least there's people there. D2C
Yeah.
not so much. So what was the starting point for your thoughts on
Yeah. I mean, well, actually, the brands, even before the brand started, I was blogging anyway. And it's not that I'm a particularly good blogger, to be honest. I mean, my English sucks. My wife's Malaysian Chinese, and I always say that she's got better English than me. Um, but I was actually sort of blogging because I was taking a year out from work. So we'd shortly moved over to Malaysia. So I was just blogging in general just to do something. And I was writing very random content, to be honest. It was very scattergun, not with any sort of commercial intent, to be honest. It was very much, I want to learn, well, I want to improve my writing. So let's blog 3 or 4 times a week and see how I get on. I mean, I had the luxury of time. So I did this for like a good 6, 7 months and actually noticed that I was getting traction for certain sort of certain niches. And I was actually looking into particular sort of supplement products and I was trying them. So I was trying them. Then I did the typical affiliate thing where I ended up reviewing them. Again, not necessarily looking to be commercial. I just quite enjoyed trying it out. And I was genuinely looking for a product that I would take. And in the end, because I couldn't find products, so I ended up deciding to do my own. And I wrote the journey about creating my own brand on my blog. So I wrote about 60,000 words, I think, on there. And yeah, that actually developed almost like a tiny audience already, so that when I released the brand, I had people asking for it. So which was interesting. So I developed, if you like, an audience. It was quite small, the audience. They were like very, very sort of very keen, and they resonated with why I was developing the product. So in the end, as soon as the product was released, like we had this little audience. So then it sort of shifted and there was some commercial intent on the blog. And that's when I decided to start looking and sort of being a bit more focused on what I was writing about.
It's
And you
very
use
interesting.
tools, yeah. And you use tools to do that, of course, like SEO tools. Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the mechanics of that in a second. But I
Mm,
fear that people want to skip past the journey and just go to the neat little tactical
mm,
bit. And I suspect that it's about the journey that makes the thing work in the first place. So, sort of reflecting on that, you were first of all, I guess you're willing to experiment with just doing something to improve the skill and put something out there and see what resonated. I think that's
yeah.
it sounds a little bit sort of random, and certainly I wouldn't suggest somebody quit the day job and do that, or
Oh no.
take funding from business partners or get a loan and do that. But on the other hand, if you can find a way of doing that, and there's nothing to stop anyone doing this part time, I guess.
Yeah.
It sounds very much like something one could do part time
Yeah.
alongside a day job. But I think it reminds me a bit of how I created the podcast actually that we are speaking to each other on now, and which has made good money and provided a lot of opportunities for people to learn, for me to get things out there, for people like yourself to get themselves out there. So there's a lot of positive win-wins for everyone. And
Yeah.
that started with me just talking about my journey as an Amazon seller. Actually, and it took about 6 months before I even began to think about monetizing it. And I wasn't really confident enough until somebody said, "Well, everyone else is hanging out their shingle. Why don't you do the same?" So it's interesting
Yeah.
that sometimes, a little bit of creativity and randomness can be part of the journey, can't it? I mean, looking back on it, if you had to sort of package it up a little bit more neatly for somebody to copy your path, what would you keep of that, and what would you say was part of your success, and what was just kind of random
Mm.
and wouldn't be needed again if you had to sort of reverse engineer it for somebody?
Yeah. I mean, I would say if you're it's a real cliche, and I almost sort of rolling my own eyes saying this or even thinking about it. It's this passion thing, isn't it? And yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. If you were trying to follow this approach by using your last 10, 20K in the bank, that's a dangerous path, because it can be hit and miss. For me, it was a case of I was pretty passionate about the product because I wanted to take it. So that was my sort of motivation, because I really, really wanted a product. And then actually I was thinking, 50%, 60% sure this will be commercial. But if I was starting from scratch, I would actually probably um, not do like my own custom formula like I did. I would actually probably use like a private label product and actually test the market and do it this way. Then actually look at doing sort of the blogging to build up the audience alongside of, say, maybe more paid traffic sort of avenues. Whereas for me, it completely was with paid traffic, I'm still really new to it, I'll be honest. And my background is certainly doing more, sort of SEO based traffic generation and more recently email, which we can talk about or touch on later.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I would do. I would probably look at, and then in fact, I actually had friends here, fellow expats and entrepreneurs who said, why don't you put up a landing page and not even have the product ready, just and refund anyone that buys it, refund, say, sorry, it's sold out. But for me, and that is a purely with an entrepreneurial, right, let's test the market. That makes sense. But for me, the problem with that is that because my face isn't on the label, but it's on the website. And so that's part of the authenticity for me. It actually makes me uncomfortable being on the front and center of the brand, but I thought that was important because it's a big part of the brand story.
Yeah,
So yeah,
interesting. Yeah, no, some very interesting reflections there. What's nice is that it doesn't fit neatly into some sort of formulaic approach, which I think is
yeah,
partly why it works. Anything very formulaic, there are two problems with it. Number one, your competition's doing it already, and if not, they're going to copy you because it's obvious. And the
yeah,
second one is your audience is bored of that because they've heard it all before. So it's
yeah,
I think in the end, there's nothing wrong strategically with. I might be tempted to do that because I wouldn't be that interested in the supplement. You see, this is the difference between you and me, and this is why it
yeah,
probably wouldn't have worked for me at all. Is I would have said, because I've taken super greens, and I need to lose weight and I need to get healthy. So I'm like kind of sold on the basic idea, but I'm lukewarm about it. Whereas you're obviously just
yeah,
quietly a bit obsessed. You're scratching your own itch. It's like a constant, like,
yeah,
yeah, but is that really the best possible? Is that really the thing?
mm,
Is it, that kind of
yeah,
obsessive thing? Like you were talking about, podcast microphones before the show. I bought
yeah,
like five, and is this my last one I'm going to buy? I'm almost certainly not because I'm looking for
mm,
that ideal sound, that authoritative, warm, and yet crisp. And so it's a quiet obsession of mine. And you kind of have the similar to Super Queen. So I would say the first thing is that
yeah,
obsession is likely to attract other people who are a bit obsessive, and that's going to be a loyal audience. My
yeah,
first reflection. Second reflection is a private label formula wouldn't be unique, so it's hard to reflect, to
yeah,
defend against. And the third thing is dry
exactly.
testing. You see, I would do the dry testing because I would only be interested in the money, but I just don't think
Mm,
that would work because people would sense I was only in it for the money. That's
yeah,
my response. I
that's
know it's interesting, isn't it?
yeah. That last point's really interesting because this could go down. This could be a whole episode on its own in terms of the entrepreneurial journey when you're creating your brand, or actually when you developed your brand and it's live and you're looking to scale it. Because I always said when I started, it's not about the money. I want to create a good brand because I want to take the product. So yeah, if you produce a product and you put half of what you really want to have inside it and you make it an inferior product, then all I'm doing is I'm taking it myself and I'm sort of kidding myself. So actually in the same instance, it needs to be commercial. We're not a charity, so it has to be commercial. And that's the tricky thing. And then there has been times, and I have to admit, we're 18 months in and I was thinking, guys, is this really going to work? We make money, but making money and then making like a sort of a sustainable business that we can grow with employees and actually maybe even exit at some stage, then that's another issue. So it's really and like as you know yourself, like when you're running a business, you have ups and downs, but it's challenging,
Yeah.
sort of trying to reconcile that. Yeah.
Yeah. What I would say, I think, how can I put this? What I'm getting from the journey, we move on to the tactical traffic stuff, by the
Mm.
way, if you're listening, folks. But I'm loving this because I don't think the tactics are what's going to win stuff for anyone. Actually, I think
Mm.
this is their quotes magic. It's not a formula at all. I think it's two
Yeah.
things. Number one, if you care about it, you just put your finger on the fact that you're going to stick with it because you're going to have bad days and good days. Like anything
Yeah.
significant, like training for a marathon. I've trained for half marathons, and that's pretty painful. You got to have a strong objective and external
Yeah.
expectations, but also internal ones, like a marriage, like a career, like bringing up kids. Anything significant is going to have painful days, right? And if you're not committed, you're going to flake off. I think that's the first thing. And I've seen that a lot with people who aren't that committed. When it gets a little bit tricky, they just disappear. I mean, normally they
Yeah.
say, "Oh, I want to stop mentoring or leave the group or whatever." And the second thing is, I think that there is a nose that people have out there for somebody who's committed versus flaky. And I think people respond to the
Mm.
fact that you're doggedly sticking at something and searching
Yeah.
for the answer to their question as well as yours, which is a product that does X that really solves a problem, whatever that
Yeah.
is. Super greens. I don't even know what they do. Allegedly, they're good for health, but that's kind of irrelevant because
Yeah.
this isn't about not trying to sell me super greens. But so really fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the traffic piece, which is a little bit more
Yeah.
tactical.
Yeah.
So the first thing to say is, and I think I don't want to gloss over this point, you started building an audience way before you had anything to sell, which is kind of the
Yeah.
opposite to most people I've worked with in the private label sphere. If they're not good, I mean, some people are great at this. Most people go buy the product from China based on a bunch of research, or if it's supplements from the UK, maybe, and then they put on Amazon and they throw traffic at it in a desperate attempts to find an audience for a product they've already developed. Now you kind of co-develop the product and the audience alongside each other, which is kind of cool to me. So tell me a bit more about
Yeah.
that journey that you had and how you communicated that journey to your audience, how you built that audience at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, the blog, I mean, actually what I did do is, I mean, it's a slow journey, blogging for a start. I mean, especially now, I mean, I was doing some SEO sort of 10 years ago, and the cliche there is that it was a lot easier. So I did have a background in doing it. So with building the audience, it was literally, I was blogging, sharing it with friends and with expats like living in this community. And then I was sort of writing, and it was really random stuff. I wrote, just being about an expat, just doing intermittent fasting, the Aura Ring, just doing some product, well, if anyone knows the Aura Ring. It's a great bit of tech, but all this sort of stuff. And then when I started talking about the greens niche, and actually I was ranked for products that I'd actually tried, and it was interesting. I was raising sort of issues that I thought were present in different brands, and actually discovered that this was sort of something that most brands actually, in my opinion, didn't do right from the consumer point of view. And that's what I sort of doubled down on, really. And that's what one of the sort of USPs for my brand is. And it's all about like transparency. And as part of that, then I started thinking, well, what if I wrote my process of developing this brand as separate blog posts? So, I was looking at, well, which fulfillment center should I use in the US? How about merchant processing? How about, in fact, the debate, Shopify, WooCommerce? I even talked about that on the blog. So all of these issues about customer support, what tools shall I use? Now, all of this I was actually writing this while actually looking and actually researching what to do. So it was quite interesting. I mean, some of it has changed since, and this is probably a call for me to update that content, but but some of that actually changed. And actually, I did have an idea of thinking, well, if this brand actually becomes commercial, then this writing about the creating of the brand is sort of one piece of the puzzle, because the second piece is traffic generation and basically marketing.
Yeah,
So that was, yeah.
that's fascinating. So for me, that falls into the three phases, which, by the way, I think it's very humble to recognize that you're going to need to develop your craft over time. So if somebody came to me and said, because I used to teach piano a lot and I still do a little bit of that to keep my hand in, and my wife does a lot, and said, okay, so I want to play the piano commercially, and I've been paid to play the piano a lot of my life, and so my wife. I'd say, great. So what's your time scale? And they'd say 6 months, and I'd say, go away. You're a fantasist because it's going to be a lot slower than that. Now, obviously,
Yeah.
the great thing about digital skills and and the viability of these markets and the hunger there is out there for audiences for digitally delivered goods. Let's put it that way. Whether you, well, let's say delivered, digitally bought goods, i.e., e-commerce, right?
Yeah.
There's a hunger for it. It's not the same as trying to be a pianist, hyper competitive. Nevertheless, there is a learning curve. So it seems to me you went through
Mm.
3 phases just to learn about blogging. And it gradually became more and more commercial and more niche over time. Which is number one, talk about everything just to kind of get started, which I think is great because most people never start anything, me included, with many of
Mm.
my ideas are stillborn. The second thing is you started writing about the greens niche specifically, and then you started talking about your specific brand development story, which is a
Yeah.
kind of beautifully, it's like phases. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say you could
Mm.
make a course straight away and you have to do phase one, two, and three in that order, but there is something organically logical about
Yeah.
that for me, I think. Was this
Yeah.
just all by chance? Did you have a kind of grand plan, or did the plan that gradually occur to you to do it in this way, or how did that come about?
Well, it was actually, excuse the pun, quite organic, the process, because I mean, I was involved with the supplement sector sort of years ago, and I was doing digital marketing for some brands, and I did affiliate marketing sort of many years ago. And actually, I didn't want to get back into the supplement space. I was not keen because I mean it's very competitive, and there are sort of steps you need to jump through, especially if you're creating your own brand. You know, from compliance to actually physically shipping the products. You know, and it just actually, I mean, for me, setting up a website, an e-com store is pretty straightforward, but it's all the other steps that I was sort of, do I want to do this? But I was looking for something that I could get my teeth into. And originally when I looked at Amazon, I was going to be one of the guys. I mean, I went to the Canton Fair and I was blown away, to be honest. Um, there was just so much there, and I didn't want to create a brand, just scale it or try to scale it and then sell it. I wanted to have something that I knew that, I was in it because I wanted to be in it, because I was self-interested. Like I wanted to take the product or use the service, whatever I was doing. I didn't want it to be just a quick churn and burn, you know.
Yeah.
And that's why I didn't do any drop shipping business. I didn't do any like private labeling, because I was concerned that I didn't really own anything. I wanted to actually own it, and it's a brand. It's more than just the ingredients in this tub.
Yeah. And I think this is so interesting because your journey is quite different from the cliched kind of, this is what I went to the Canton Fair, private label some stuff, did some product research using Helium 10 or Jungle Scout or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
I think the fact that you were kind of knew how much work it was going to be, but went ahead anyway because you really cared about the quality of what you were making. I think again, I suspect this stuff just communicates itself to the consumers. I mean, in your case, you communicated directly
Yeah.
by talking about the product development. Again, two things I think you're doing right, which a lot of private label slash custom product businesses are missing out. Number one, despite being uncomfortable with it, you wanted to be the face of the brand because it personalizes it. And I would always say to anyone who wants to create a brand, like the most unique thing is you. It
Mm.
doesn't mean that
Yeah.
you don't have to package it up and think it through and sell it, but it does mean it's easier to create a unique thing about a single person than create a
Mm.
corporate identity with no person visible. And most people seem to do that as a default in e-commerce, as distinct from the
Yeah.
information marketing space, where of course it's all the cult of the guru, as they call it, which I hate, but it kind
Yeah.
of is
Yeah.
about that. Number one, that's a missed opportunity. And number two, as they say, show how the sausage is made. People want to know what processes you've gone through to get to the Holy Grail. They want the story.
Mm.
If Indiana Jones just was, I went out there was this really valuable thing. I bought it off a guy for $10 million because I'm rich already from an auction. End of film. There would be nothing engaging about that. There's got to be a bit of a struggle for people to even believe that there's a thing valuable in the first place, which, by the way, is sometimes fake. But you know what I mean. That struggle, I think,
Yeah.
is part of the psychology of a brand. Why did somebody create something? They did 10 different versions of it, and then it didn't work, and then they did this, and it kind of did work, and that engages people. So I think you've stumbled across a lot of very profound principles in your search, perhaps. So let's talk about the
Yeah.
bit where you started making money, which is where the people want to jump straight in and go, right, where's the bit where I make the money? So obviously you're getting sales, I think, from day one, from what I understand, with no paid traffic. Is that right? Tell us
Uh,
about that.
that's right. Yeah. I mean, Actually, I on reflection, I could have done this a lot better. And, I, yeah, I could have taken actually a bit of a learning curve from the gurus actually, and actually built up sort of a sort of excitement over the launch. Whereas it pretty much, I pressed a button, it went live, and I sent a few emails out. So I made sales, like you say, from day one. It wasn't a lot, but we sold 3 or 4 tubs that as soon as it went live. But these were people that had seen my blog and actually had said, well, when is it available? And so, I emailed them, and then obviously I could sort of show on the blog, right, that it's live now. You can go across to this site. What I should have done in hindsight is generated an email list and actually had like an early bird offer, sign up 30% discount on the first sort of 100 people who come in the door. That's what I should have done in hindsight. So if I did it again, I would definitely do that. And that was the interesting thing about email. I'd never really done anything with email before. And everyone's telling me, build a list, build a list. And I'm building this blog and I'm not even building a list. And it was only when the brand was live, and then we did the usual like email capture. And then we started building up an email list. And I don't know if they want to sort of segue straight into that, but that's actually what we found is a real sort of money earner really, in terms of using the newsletter or actually just doing email marketing.
Definitely want to talk about email marketing. I'm a big
Mm.
fan of it. I think it's the pretty much the oldest form of it kind of predates the World Wide Web, doesn't it? Strictly speaking, I guess there's a
Yeah.
difference in the internet and the World Wide Web, and email came first. I remember looking at my friends in the mid '90s when I was at university, which dates me, and they were using email. And I thought, why bother? So I just completely ignored it. But it still
Yeah.
makes money. But before we get into that, give us a bit of a taste of the results. So how long have you been in business, first of all, and what sort of numbers that have you managed to hit so far?
Yeah. We sort of went live sort of towards the end of 2019. I mean, in a few months in 2019, we did sort of $30,000-40,000 in like 3 months maybe. So not huge amounts, but it was, like I say, early days. Um, in the following year we did about 300 to 400, and then last year we did around 600. We've had a step up from this year, and we're well on course to do 7 figures this year. It's early days, but we've really surpassed what we did last year. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think
so
those are
good.
impressive numbers for a D2C site. I mean, on Amazon, those would be, pretty healthy. And D2C, I think it's like an order of magnitude harder because you got to get your own traffic. So those are good numbers. So
And
yeah,
yeah, this is based off of, I mean, even now when I do sort of paid marketing, not on Amazon, it's actually it's really difficult. I mean, the ROAS is not great for us at the moment because it's still something that we're trying to crack, and we're testing out a few different sources. But the SEO and the affiliates are the main channels for us, and obviously we are now on Amazon, and so we do actually okay. I mean, it's early days on Amazon for us because that was a massive learning curve. And I do use an agency because, to be honest, my experience early days with Amazon wasn't good, and so I basically just went and got an agency to help set me up and get me going on that.
wow, interesting. So you're really coming at it from the opposite direction of a lot of e-commerce sellers. Very, very interesting. So
Yeah.
definitely want to talk about email marketing. Before we get into that, though, tell us about this blogging. Obviously, it's worked well. If you're getting, on track for 7 figures, most of which is driven by SEO and affiliates. I mean, let's talk about affiliates as well, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
Obviously, you consider being an affiliate marketer yourself, I was selling other people's products. I presume you've got other people selling
Yeah.
for you. We'll talk about
Yes.
that in a sec because that's quite different from what the majority of us do. But blogging,
Mm.
first of all, so we've gone through. So you've got your 3 phases. So I'm dotting around here, but I'm just fascinated by your journey. So we had the 3 phases. You were blogging fairly randomly. Then you started blogging about super greens and supplements and sort of things that you're really passionate about. Then you started blogging about your products development journey. Is
Yeah.
that was that the main driver of commercially viable traffic, do you think? Or what have you done in the SEO side to actually bring in people who buy stuff eventually?
Yeah, I mean, you basically, if you've got nothing to do all day and you love writing random stuff, then you can follow that approach. But it is, after a while, I mean, SEO is challenging, and I've seen in the last few years, it's got, I mean, it's a cliche again, but it has got harder. There's more competitors. You've got to deal with Google, of course, Google updates. So even my blog, I've seen traffic sort of, halve at one stage, then it went back up again. And so there is that sort of that Google dance you're playing with. But to be honest, I just kept on doing it because the blog, because it's sort of almost like a personal brand now as well. So okay, if I don't get green traffic, it's a shame and it will affect sales, but I still like the site. So I'm not going to stop doing, the blogging.
Yeah.
But you have to be more targeted. So what I've done is I did have someone to help write some content for me, but it is difficult to get someone to write content like this because it's a personal blog. So I would throw in like my anecdote stuff and actually interlinking between all of the different articles. I can do that because I know, I mean, there's about 700 articles on the site. I know, oh, I mean, I've obviously you can't know all of the content, but I know if I've written about a particular subject. So I know that I can link with it. And Google wants to see that. Google wants to see that you're linking between content on your site and other resources or authority sites off your site. So that's easy for me to do. But what I did do last year is I slowed down a bit with the blogging because I found that my focus was actually more on the blog than on the brand. So I it was like the 80-20 rule. I was sort of 80% doing my blog and in writing the content and thinking, oh, I need to write about this. And this is an issue with my brand or developing a brand. Let's write about this. But in the end, like last year, I realized that if I wanted to run this as just a one-man band, then fine, it can be a lifestyle business. But last year, I realized that I need to develop the brand and it needs to be more than it was. So we did a rebrand and we repackaged the labels and stuff and actually sort of took it to the next level to make it more of a household brand. So that's where, like last year, so I took a step off the blogging a little bit, but now I'm basically writing a ton of content about health and wellness and nutrition that in itself may not get much traffic, but it supports the site, and the site is about greens, vitamins, nutrients in general, particular diets, fasting, etc. And a little bit of sort of chronic fatigue syndrome, which is what I suffer, which is why I sort of did the brand in the first place, to be honest.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've had a client who developed his own supplement to secure one of his own medical conditions, which I thought was really, really strong. We kind of lost touch. I don't know. I think he was frustrated with the fact that it takes time to put together a good brand. I don't know, maybe I was too slow, but yeah, it's a strong connection to people who are taking supplements. There's a lot of people with lots of different medical
Yeah.
issues out there, are chronic, right, which aren't necessarily acute enough that it's not cancer or a stroke or heart attack
Yeah.
that's going to take you to a hospital and they can fix you, but yeah, it's out there. So yeah, very, very interesting. So you also, what I'm getting from your story is a lot of identification between the people who might consume your products and you. There's not that big mismatch that you sometimes get with
Yeah.
somebody like selling stuff because it will make money, but they don't care. There seems to be a really overlap between you and your
Yeah.
audience, really.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, if you have that approach, it's easier. if you've got thick skin and you can just sort of, try something, if it doesn't work, dust yourself off, do it again. Like, it's like the classic, like VC investing, isn't it? You invest in 10 things, 9 of them won't work, but you just need one and it's Great.
Yeah, that's the allure of that way of thinking, and that's the allure I think of the stuff that I've been there, and that was the allure that got me in. I think, and is that Helium 10 or Jungle Scout or some research tool, it's Google
Yeah.
Analytics, perhaps in your case, is going to tell you the answer. But I just honestly, my experience of people who've really built brands is that actually caring helps. I just don't think you
Yeah.
can cut through the noise. And talking, SEO is competitive. Google SEO is what we mean here, I guess. But
Mm.
Amazon SEO is also competitive. Amazon goes through waves of horrendous slaps, just as bad as the Panda slap or whatever the latest Google
Mm.
slaps are for rankings. So in that environment with hyper competition, I think actually caring probably really helps. I think it's actually
Yeah.
it's just an old school, unreplaceable thing that people will attach to people who
Yeah.
care about the thing they care about, really genuinely care,
Yeah.
rather than fake it. So there you go, and that's bad news for
Yeah.
those of us who are less attached to particular things, I guess. But so tell me a bit. Let's getting a bit
Yeah.
more commercial then. Let me drag you kicking and screaming to the bit that makes the money, because obviously you guys are making money. I mean, this is a great success. So, which bits of your, which of your blog posts or content generally are performing well in terms of attracting traffic that then goes on to convert? And what is your mechanism? We've mentioned email marketing. Is that the
Yeah.
core of it, or is that just a kind of side issue? How do you take people through your funnel? Talk me through your funnel,
Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, if I just take half a step back,
please.
when the website went live, what I looked at, actually, my strategy was going to be very simple. It was going to be, if I can get a third of my sales or traffic through web properties that I own, so my blog, and even the blog on the brand that generates traffic. If I can do that, 30%, if I can get affiliates promoting my brand, and these can be anything from affiliates to ambassadors, I influencers I can put in there as well. So I had two of those buckets. A third bucket was going to be paid traffic. I hadn't really thought of Amazon, to be honest, but I suppose that could be that almost a fourth bucket, really. And that was my thinking, the first 1 or 2 years, get to the point where the brand is getting known. And once it gets known, you can then promote it to affiliates and other sort of digital media. You could say, look, we're featured on X, Y, and Z. This is a brand. We're getting good traction. Would you like to try it out? Would you like to promote it? And then it was going to be the paid traffic to really scale it. I'm talking like multi seven figures at that stage. So in terms of the blog content, we actually have a number of affiliates that actually rank for some pretty decent keywords. Anything, it's obviously the issue with affiliates is if you start suddenly recruiting 100 affiliates or you go into a network. So I've been approached by some affiliate networks to put my product in there. And whilst it's attractive prospect of having thousands of affiliates promoting your brand, what I was worried about is that if you're not careful, affiliates can really sort of tarnish the brand because they can overpromise and then which you cannot deliver. And you see this with diet products, for instance, or muscle building products. I mean, not protein or creatine, more like testosterone type things. They overpromise and underdeliver. And I didn't want to be on the receiving end of that. So in the end, we've created our own affiliate program so we can actually quality control who we have on board. And it's got to be a win-win. Like they've got to promote it because it generates an income or part of an income for them. And for us, it needs to be reaching obviously a bigger audience. And these affiliates tend to be SEO related, SEO based or influencer based, mostly SEO based. So we're all like occupying or looking to occupy the first 1 or 2 pages of Google, basically. And what you can get is that you can get sort of like affiliates will be jostling it out for ranking for my brand term. So this is something, I wanted to be there for my brand. You don't want your brand to be on page 2 because you've got 10 affiliates promoting it. So there's the challenge, but that's what we did to really look at like monetizing like the blog content. we sort of set up like it's basically a funnel in a way that we would have like very generic type greens related content, and we would say there are issues with some greens that don't do this, but we do. Take a look at my brand. Here we are. I even review my own brand. Here's the good things. There are some minor negatives with it. There's never 100% perfect product, but this is what I did, developed it for these reasons. I take it. And then we look at the click-through rate, the earnings per click, and I do that for my own blog. We do that for other affiliates as well. And
Right. Okay.
yeah.
So there's quite a lot to take in. So let me just
Yeah.
this. So wow. First of all, 4 traffic strategies. There was going to be 3. I guess the fourth one, Amazon, as you say. So getting some of your sales for your own site. So I guess what, through SEO primarily? Is that what you
Yes,
meant?
that's
Okay.
right.
So SEO, getting affiliates promoting it, which is not something people talk about much. We've had the odd person on to talk about how amazing affiliate programs can be, but it's been
Yeah.
an exception to the rule. So that's very interesting. And then paying to scale a lot, and then Amazon obviously can do scale as well, but comes with different challenges. So it doesn't sound like it's your comfort zone. So, not like we talk too little about Amazon here. So, uh, so let me just ask the simplest kind of big picture questions first, and then we'll dive into these gradually. So first of all, insofar as you can tell, and that's another question, how do you tell?
Mhm.
What is driving the most sales out of that now, and what was driving these to start with? Let's ask those questions first.
Yeah, I mean, initially it was mostly my blog because it was completely new brand, and it was only really people knew about the blog, knew about the brand through my blog. Then once we recruited affiliates, I mean, I had some affiliate friends from back in the day when we used to promote products. So that was really straightforward to sort of recruit them. But it's actually the ironic thing, I was doing email to onboard affiliates. So I was reaching out to affiliates and sort of trying to give them, yeah, it's a tricky one because you're trying to give them a reason to sign up and actually even to try it. I offered to send out products to them, and it's I'm selling the fact that they can promote my product, but and what I had to do is do it on the basis of the earnings per click and the average commissions and things like this. So we actually offer pretty good commission because at the affiliate model, I mean, you're paying on a result. So you can determine your acquisition cost. So we offer a 30%. Well, it ranges from 15 to 30% commission depending on the type of affiliate. But you know, if an affiliate's bringing external traffic to you and they get the sale, then that costs. So whereas when I dabbled with paid traffic, you would spend thousands of dollars and realize, right, those ads were shocking. They didn't work. I've just spent a few $1,000s on that. So the affiliate approach really, really works well. It's just now that you have to approach affiliates and you're selling the idea to them to promote your product, and it's easy to get a few affiliates, but to get enough that actually have a big audience, then that is challenging. But we've managed to do it. Last year we recruited some really good affiliates, and that's helped with our growth.
So just to give an idea of the size of the results, there's obviously a lot of work, but sounds very effective. Uh,
Mm.
so if you did something like $600,000 in 2021, if I've got that figure about right, what
Yeah.
percentage of that, or what number was driven by affiliate sales, if you can attribute it that way?
Yeah, it's probably about 40%.
Yeah, impressive. I mean, that's what I think is really nice about that. Just a couple of reflections. Well, first of all, 15 to 30% commission. You're paying on a result. Now, Amazon is the same with their sales commission. I would tell you, to anyone who's bitching about Amazon taking 15% of the sales, yes, Amazon takes a lot of money off us if you sell on Amazon. I would worry
Yeah.
less about the sales commission. They're paying on a result. As you say, the ads are pay per click, PPC. We say it very quickly, like we forget what, yeah, but pay per click not pay
Yes.
per sale. There's a critical distinction. Now, obviously, in the
Yeah.
Amazon
Yeah.
world, where you got a 10, 20, 30% conversion rate on the listings, at least, if they're well written and well priced
Yeah.
relative to the market, yeah, that's a pretty good return on investment that you can see fairly easily,
Yeah.
even though, of course, Amazon taking bigger and bigger and bigger percentage of our budgets and advertising because they're not dumb. It's pay to play.
Mm.
But yeah, just paying on results, I think, is a really powerful business model that we overlook at our peril. I mean, what's been your
Yeah.
experience of the finances of that? Is it good for cash flow? Is it sort of is that part of the secret
Yeah.
of why you've been able to scale with an affiliate marketing approach?
Yes and no. I mean, with the supplement that we produce is not cheap to make. I mean, we I think it's sort of going back to what we talked about at the start. Really, it's because it's a brand, a product I actually want to take. So I made sure that it had certain sort of ingredients and certain amounts in it. So it's not cheap to make. So, if I was looking at this from purely a commercial aspect and I had, as they say in Chinese, thick face or thick skin, and I didn't mind being the front person of it and knowing that people might be upset with it, then we could have cut costs a lot and we could have, reduced the cost of our product by maybe sort of 40% for sure. But so the reason I'm saying that is because it's a supplement business, we buy stock and we have to buy a fair number of tubs now because we're selling like a pretty decent amount. Then it is cash. We need the cash flow. So, for the first sort of 18 months, I was bankrolling it because it's difficult in those early days to work out, well, how many tubs will we sell? And the lead time for producing the supplement was 3 months, 4 months. So that was challenging. Now it's a lot easier because the traffic is more consistent. So we know the parameters for what will be an average and a great day. So, it's easier to work out stock. But because we're getting paid on results, so we're not having to spend say $20,000, $30,000 on ads and then suddenly realize we've only get 30 grand back or 15 grand back. But that works. Now we know what to put our ad spend on. So it has helped in that regard. And also because part of that traffic is generated from my own blog. So I'm not necessarily have to pay out myself for that traffic. It's within the business. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So we ought to talk about SEO in a second. This is quite wide ranging. I'm just kind of following my nose with this because we've got an outline that we wrote as I usually do. But I think there's just so much that you're doing that is kind of
Yeah.
organic somehow, and it's not just a kind of standardized one size fit all. That I want to kind of pull a few of the lessons out of this. So tell me about the SEO then, because it's obviously a big success. It was the first thing that went the first time. It sounds like it's responsible for, I don't know, what, half of your sales last year, even something like that.
Yeah.
Assuming that
Yeah.
paid ads is small and affiliates is 40%, then I'm guesstimating
Yeah.
here. So that's still a success. So again, let's dig a little bit more into the specifics of this. What is it that's driving that success? We talked in quite sort of general terms. You write a lot. Obviously, you write a lot in very general terms.
Yeah.
Are you writing you write about writing things that are good for the brand, even though they're not necessarily going to drive sales or even traffic? But what about the
Yeah.
pieces that actually give you the cash cow? How do those pieces
Yeah.
get written, and how do you choose what to write
Right.
about? Tell us a bit more in detail.
Yeah. I mean, if you could rank number one for, say, for argument's sake, greens powders, you'd be getting a ton of traffic. Okay, it's not bottom of the funnel, like, right, what is the brand or the brand review. It's not that type of traffic, but it is pretty close. So that is very much like actually, I guess the simplest way of doing it is you're writing blog content that will cover, in an ideal world, the whole funnel. So you're writing about general, you know, it could be greens related, sort of multivitamins, in terms of certain ingredients. You could be writing about them, knowing that actually people will be interested. Like ashwagandha is a great ingredient. It's in a number of like greens products, but this is this is an ingredient that's got really popular in the last few years because it helps with stress, it helps relax. So this is why, if you can write a ton of content about this ingredient, then obviously there's some people just curious what this ingredient is, but some people actually want to take it. And then it's about trying to convert those people to a product that has this ingredient in. And it's not, and to be honest, it's not necessarily mine. There are some great ashwagandha products that just have that ingredient in it. In which case, what I do is I say, well, if you're looking for just a product with ashwagandha in it, then these are a few. And actually, I do recommend, in some cases, Amazon, although they pay rubbish affiliate commissions. But I will say, just have a look on Amazon.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So you're willing to recommend things that are, again, it feels like it's about three things, which is more sophisticated than your Amazon seller is just generally sell. I'm going to pay for a click today. Can I get the sale tomorrow or the next day? This is like a slightly more sophisticated. Is you've got to build a brand that people actually care about. But also, I think what you're also doing is giving content that invites people to come back to a trusted source of content, whether or not you make any money from it that day or that month, which I think is really smart. It's exactly why I'm, interviewing you for the podcast. I don't know if we've got any affiliate deal set up or not. To be honest, I don't think it's that important. What's important to me is engage the audience. And if I think about it, I get a bit slack sometimes. I say, oh, by the way, if we've got an affiliate thing for X and somebody sends it over and we set it up. But the point is, by keeping the audience engaged, I know the value is.
Michael, I've lost audio.
Okay. Just stop the recording for a second. Can you hear me now? Is there something odd going on?
Yeah, I can't hear any audio.
Very odd. Okay.
You're back on now.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Well, we'll keep going. This is good stuff. Are you okay to keep going? By the way, I'm just like.
Yeah, sure. I heard Zoom saying the recording stopped.
Yes, so I stopped the recording. Yes. So I'll kick it off again with another question. Here we go. So let's talk a little bit about this, covering the whole of the funnel. In other words, I suppose, so those who are not familiar, the top of the funnel is basically people, things like, I feel a bit tired, what supplements could I take? Fairly general sort of question to Google. Yeah. And the bottom one is cheapest ashwagandha supplements for UK males, or something very specific, high buyer intent. Right, so... are you trying to sort of hit all those people at different stages of the buying journey / the funnel in one article, or are you trying to separate out on different articles so some are designed for those who are very close to buying? How do you sort of split that up between the different articles? What's the sort of blog structure, if you like?
Right. Well, the first point is I should be. Now, whether I'm doing that effectively is up for debate, but I should be. That's what I should be doing. But it's a case of, I mean, to be honest, if you're trying to rank in Google for, I'm feeling tired, what can I do? You're never gonna rank for that.
Yeah, that was probably a bit of a dumb example.
It was just an example, but it is a good point though, because at the very top of the funnel, it's going to be difficult on a blog to get. I mean, you've got the Healthline, PubMed, you've got all of the Cosmo type, high authority sites in Google. You're never going to get above there. And this is what some of the SEO tools are useful for. They can actually give you some data to say, well, if you're going to write about this, you haven't got any hope of getting on page one. Now, there's a secondary, you could take the argument, and I know I have done this, and actually, I first wrote about greens products. I wrote a 9,000 word article that took me about a week to write about greens. And it was literally everything I could research on greens. But in the end, it was just so much information. It wasn't a good article because it was just too long. So I broke it out, and then I, in a way, broke it into like middle and bottom of the funnel type content. So for instance, I'll write about on separate articles. So I talk about the best greens powders, make it clear it's that my brand's in there and other popular brands. And I actually am honest that some of the other brands I quite like, but again, there's some negatives, and those negatives I've turned into why I've done mine. So I've make it clear. You have to be transparent that you're doing that. I mean, obviously, otherwise it's deceiving. You have to be honest that you're doing this. And then I look at, I review my brand and actually say, this is a good things. I also look at, well, what are the side effects with greens products? Bloating, constipation, that some people do have these experiences, and why. So we talk about that. We talk about common ingredients within these products, which can then result in like another page which saying, well, best, for argument's sake, ashwagandha products. Oh, and if you don't want to buy a single one, why not buy a product that has it in and actually have the benefits of having all these? So you can do that. I mean, you can end up writing a massive list of all the content. And then if you're doing it like a seasoned SEO, you would go in, use tools and go, right, okay, how much do I need to write about this? What sort of subject matter? What is the intent on this article? Is it purely informational? Is it commercial? If it's informational, then it has to have a certain informative content and not be promoting products. If it's commercial, well, what's on page 1 of Google? If the article you're writing is not in any way like anything else on page 1 of Google, then you're probably wasting your time, because Google clearly doesn't want that content. So this is the way you do it. It takes a lot of time to do it, but you get it right, it can work well.
Amazing. So one thing we've mentioned that this is going to be the longest interview ever, so I must let you go back to your life at some point. But I'm just fascinated by the strategies and the way they fit together. It's not because I'm not interested in your SEO experience, but I feel the tactical stuff is probably more talked about, and there's probably YouTube videos galore about that.
Yeah.
But the way it all puts together and the reality of your journey is unique to you, and that's what I'm finding very interesting. So tell us about email marketing, because obviously, blogs driving a lot to start with, then you add in the affiliate program, which is fascinating and obviously working really well for you. You're driving, significant numbers in, relatively early stages of a business, still only 3 years in, not even that.
Yeah.
But the email marketing, so you said that you didn't even bother to set up email capture when you first started blogging and getting traffic, which you kind of regretted by the sound of it. So you did set it up at some point. What prompted you to set it up, and how do you use it, and what results are you getting?
Well, actually, I have to confess, my email capture on my blog is, I'm setting it up again. I did have it and I stopped using it, which is really awful. But actually, the success we've had with email marketing is actually on the brand. And Klaviyo is the go-to tool. Whether you're Shopify or WooCommerce, it doesn't matter. But Klaviyo is a great email tool which you can use for abandoned carts. You can set up flows, which are a whole series of, if someone's gone to the site, not abandoned, you can set up a flow of emails to be sent to them, offering a discount, etc. The usual stuff that you'll see on a Shopify or WooCommerce store. You can even do like pop-ups to get to the site. You offer a discount code so people can enter their email and actually get an email, get the discount code. So what we've done is we did do some paid marketing to sort of push people to the site. And because we now get okay numbers to the site, first 18 months, still fairly low traffic to the brand. But what we do now is we have all these automated flows for the emails already in place, like replenishment flows. So whether someone buys 1 tub, 2, 3, or 6 tubs, depending on the time, 30 days in, we send an email, do you want to buy another one, getting low, and then that's how we remind people to buy again. But we also do campaigns. So about once a month, it's actually less than sort of many D2C brands, but I didn't want to just, spam's maybe the wrong word, but just keep sending out promotional emails to people. We wanted to, we didn't want to first train customers to get used to an email coming to give them a discount, firstly. And secondly, we didn't want to just bombard people's email address with, right, oh, this week 10% off, or this week 15, buy this. So we send out 1 a month, and we were very sort of purposeful on the one we send out. So we send one out and we're offer anything from 15 to 20% coupon. And the email campaigns and the flows are responsible for about 30% of the monthly turnover on the WooCommerce store. So not the total business, but just on the WooCommerce.
Yeah, still that's a substantial amount. That sounds like a huge success to me. So just briefly, how? So again, talk me through the funnel, I suppose, is one way of putting it. So you don't really have much email capture on the blog. So where are you actually getting the
Yeah.
email addresses from? Is this people who've bought from you? Is that right? Is that
Yeah. Or
pretty much most of
people
it?
have visited. Yeah. People have visited this website. So we have a pop up straight away.
Okay.
And Klaviyo is very, very in tune with knowing if the person's been to your site before. If they've been before, then they don't show it. It's really simple setup. From a technical perspective, Klaviyo, hands down, is the best sort of tool I've used. So yeah, we do that. We have it. So we the more traffic we can get to our blog, potentially the bigger the email list. So this is something we're exploring with different strategies like Pinterest, actually. And Pinterest is an interesting one. We do a little bit of paid at the moment to get people to the brand, and then they put the email address. So we've just started doing this, so we don't have any data to really show if the ROI is there, but it's something we're playing with. But we that well the email campaigns, like the promos, I mean, we mentioned when we spoke before, we can generate anything from $10,000 to $20,000 from a couple of emails, which even I find crazy, to be honest. I mean, it's amazing.
That sounds like the promised land of email marketing that's been
uh,
always been a promise ever since the internet existed, as we said, like before the World Wide Web
yeah,
even existed. That's amazing that you're actually achieving that. And it sounds like a lot of
yeah,
it's about that missing piece. Again, if you're Amazon type focused seller, I'm not saying if you're listening you don't have your own D2C. A lot of people do if you're a serious e-commerce operator, but the mentality that Amazon generates is you get a lead. It's a bit like, smoking £5 notes, or you light your cigar with a £50 note and then throw it out the door and then start again, because you kind of assume you can't get people to come
yeah,
back and revisit. Whereas what you're doing is it's not exactly retargeting in terms of using Facebook or Google. It's better because it's your own list, but you are going back to people who've abandoned the cart and say, I noticed you didn't buy your thing. Can you buy that? That's the
yeah,
classic way of making use of a lead, which is not yet a customer. And then you go back to customers
yeah,
and saying, by the way, you're about to run out, just to let you know. And that is a service, by the way. I've bought supplements before that I thought were quite good, and I just didn't get round to buying them again. Not for
yeah,
any sort of dislike of the product. I just didn't get around to it. I just got distracted. So it is serving people. I think if you're, and to your
yeah,
point of, again, to sort of circle back round to what you've done with creating a product. I was going to say brand, that's too abstract. You created a product, and I guess we'll create other products that you really, really believe in enough to take it yourself. And you're willing to spend a lot more
yeah,
money on the ingredients that you could get away with. Um, you can feel very, very good, I think, about promoting a brand like that to people. And I think, again, that comes across. If you're just doing a salesy job, I think people sense it. The words you use, the way you come across a video. I don't know. There's something about the generically salesy versus somebody who really believes in something that I think comes across. And I think that, again,
yeah,
you can with great integrity approach people on your list in a way that if you're just flogging something for a percentage of their sales,
yeah.
you just can't have
It's
the same feeling, can you? In my
yeah.
experience.
I mean, what's interesting though is, again, because I'm not actually a salesman, and so there is, and being British, there is this rather bashful, yeah, oh look, I take it. Would you like to give it a go? Type. You have to get over that, especially as it's mostly a US audience we sell the product to, and so there is a big difference, as we know, between, like, sort of even just in culturally, in terms of how in your face you are in the US compared to the UK. So that's interesting one. And actually, I was reluctant to do any video, in fact, even podcasts, because it makes me uncomfortable, if I'm honest. So it's good to be on here and then to get over it. And secondly, I was there thinking, well, if I'm a British guy, on video talking to Americans, is it going to have that appeal? You know, is there going to be, is there going to be a disconnect between, what they're expecting out of an American produced product and an American company, and you got some bald-headed English guy talking to them on the other end of the camera. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I guess again that sort of comes to the heart of the personal branding thing, doesn't it? Again, you could have hired if you're doing a generic kind of beauty brand, you don't even need to hire. You could just go to Pixabay or any of the free
Yeah.
photo sites, or even these days you get free videos as well, and or you could
Mm,
pay iStock or Shutterstock or whatever for a
yeah.
generic picture of an absolutely beautiful, indistinguishable for anybody else, woman or man, you know,
Yeah.
um, with a photoshopped picture of you, them holding your supplements bottle, and they would
Yeah.
just feel like you're on any Amazon supplements listing ever. And I would say that's
Yeah.
a huge mistake because Rick Cesari. So I'm endorsing your approach, by the way, to the hill here. So I hope you're feeling better about this. But I would also say that the reason I'm saying it's the learning for the audience, I think, is so critical. Rick Cesari, who was behind the Lean Green Grilling Machine, going to $1 billion in sales, Sonic toothbrush, and GoPro, all of them, I
Mm,
believe, at least hundreds of millions. The last two probably billion.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
seriously effective marketer, very nice guy, not at all like what you'd expect from an American marketer, very thoughtful, but got a
Mm,
biology degree, quite an intellectual chap. But he says different is better than good, or different is better than better, in fact, which is
yeah.
really important. So if you're owning who you are and whatever follically challenged or whatever you look like. I mean, I remember the first time I did a video for the podcast, like about 5 years ago, and I look back at it, I was so disappointed. I didn't look kind of handsome or like a daytime TV presenter. I just looked like me, a bit
Yeah.
rough, bit kind of stubbly. It was cold, so my skin was looking horrible, and I've kind of got used to getting over that, and it's very interesting that you're going through that journey, and I would endorse that because I think to
Yeah.
anyone listening or watching, I would say it's a lot easier to embrace being you as a unique thing than it is to be something you're
Mm,
not anyway. And being British in America, some people might be, anti-British. A lot of Americans seem to be Anglophiles. I don't even know why. They seem to love the accent.
yeah.
I don't get
Yeah.
why, but I'll
Mm,
take it. And you'll find that there will be people out
yeah.
there who think you're more intelligent because you sound English, who will actually buy your products when they wouldn't have bought it from an American.
Mm,
So there you go. An
yeah.
unforced endorsement. You probably don't need my blessing because you're doing very, very well without it. But I think that really ties us, I think, neatly back to the beginning of your brand, and that the fact that you
Mm,
run a personal journey, that you've embraced the personal brand thing, despite the fact that you feel a bit uncomfortable about it, because it also feels honest and truthful. And I think there's a lot about your brand that authenticity, I feel, is probably a lot of the success lies on that. Do you think that's right? What do you think? What do you attribute your success so far to?
yeah. I, to a large degree, yes. Also think it's what's going to, in a way, future proof it more than say like a generic brand, because I had a really good sort of, well, a number of sessions with a guy that does like it's mentoring, I guess, or business coaching. And he was saying to me that you have to embrace what's different in terms of how are you going to stand out from other brands that have a massive media budget or advertising budget. And the fact is, the USP or for our brand is the fact that the personal story is legitimate. It's actually, it's not fake marketing. There's, there's pictures of me doing triathlon when I was back in the day, super fit, and there's pictures of me looking awful from chronic fatigue. So and then there's the writing. I mean, yeah, I mean, if anyone's going to write for 2 or 3 years about this just because they're going to try faking it, God, you deserve a medal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
you have
thing.
to
Like
enjoy it. Yeah, yeah,
I think you're right. In the end, you make an excellent point, which is that actually, faking enthusiasm is exhausting after a while.
mm,
It actually, again, the point we made before, but worth reiterating, you're probably just not going to stick with something that, whilst it may be challenging and you don't enjoy all the things, you basically feel you're on a bit of a mission about. And you clearly are on a bit of a
yeah,
mission about this. I mean, your personal journey, which we haven't delved into that much. And by the way, personal journey only matters if it connects to the personal journey of the listener or watcher or consumer of the product, I would say.
Yes.
And we are talking to
Yep.
entrepreneurs today, so we haven't dwelt on the chronic fatigue thing because that isn't relevant to their audience, for example. Whereas
Yep.
quite a lot of American style marketing, if they fall into the wrong way of doing it, I think becomes very much about I'm going to tell my story because I love telling my story. That's, if I may say so, an American fault relative to the Brits. I fall into this as well, so I'm probably quite like
Yeah.
that. It's a bit of an error because nobody really cares about you. They may think they do. What they care
Yeah.
about is
Yeah.
their projected version of themselves in your story, right? So if you're an entrepreneur,
Exactly.
don't tell me about your chronic fatigue syndrome. If you're talking about
Yeah.
why I should buy your Super Greens tonic, don't tell me about your story as an entrepreneur. Tell me about your
Yeah.
story as a a weekend warrior triathlete that then hit hard times. And so that's the other thing, isn't it,
Yeah.
that people
Yeah. Yeah.
get a bit wrong, is that you've got to relate to your audience. It's kind of basic human stuff. You know what, I'm loving this. We better draw this to a close. I mean, I could talk to you all day because there's a lot about your journey that's very, even from the entrepreneurial perspective, just without trying hard to be different, you're just different to the average, and it is automatically more engaging, I would say. And I love what you've done with the brand, and I
Yeah.
look forward to seeing where you're at in a year or 2 years time. So just
Great.
quickly, we ought to just talk about a couple of things you offer. Now, first thing is, those of you who are UK based or outside the US who really want to try Adam's supplement, the bad news is it's not available to you. Now, there's nothing that makes something more attractive than being unavailable, but this is not a marketing ploy. It says the stock's in the US and we can't really get it to you. So if you are
Well,
US based, or is that wrong? Have you
yeah,
got a solution?
actually, we don't ship to every country, but we can ship to the UK. It's just obviously the shipping cost, and it does
Yeah,
take a little bit of time.
yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
true.
we can get it to the UK. So, but it is, the brand is sort of mostly based in the US. So
Okay, well, so look,
yeah.
so for US listeners, it's a simple one, which you can go to if you want to check out the product. And if nothing else, I think you should, experience what it's like to be the consumer of a product. If you're even vaguely interested in the supplement space, and I think there is still a lot of money to be made in it. I've had clients recently who did a nice 7-figure exit from an Amazon-based business, which is a couple of supplement-based businesses, or one of them was. So still a space worth exploring. And if you go to Supergreen Tonic, TONIK for kilo.com, and use the code AmazingFBA, you'll get a discount. I don't know how much. Are we getting a massive discount, or what's what's the deal there?
Yeah. Actually, it should be a 15% discount.
Yeah, which is
So
pretty
yeah.
serious when you've got an expensive, high quality supplement. So if you want to check
Yeah.
that out, more importantly, those who are considering selling supplements, which I know is there's always a healthy percentage of people that are considering it because it has a lot of the characteristics. Yeah, it's hyper competitive, true, and there's compliance issues, so definite obvious downsides, but it has renewable built into it, which is just huge, I think, isn't it? So
Yeah.
if you want to get a consultancy, I've got a terribly complicated bit.ly link here. Let's just redirect to amazingfba.com /, Adam Wright, WRIGHT, and then we'll get you 30% discount for consulting. I understand you don't really do consulting for anyone else anyway, right? So this is, something you're just
No.
starting up. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I've had actually, I've had, since I sort of wrote about my journey, I've had 3 or 4 guys reach out to me and say they've created their own brands and they were inspired by my journey. So it was,
Wow,
and in
amazing.
fact, yeah, in fact, one of them was an affiliate of ours, and he's gone ahead and created his own brand. It's great. Yeah, he's doing really well. So yeah, because I had a few people reach out, I just thought, well, I wasn't intending to do any consultancy, but I'll offer a 1 hour consultancy session for people who basically want a roadmap and want access to the sort of the resources and actually who to use, whether it's fulfillment, manufacturing, legal, insurance, everything we can discuss on that call.
Nice, yeah, and the nitty gritty stuff that we haven't really addressed on
Yeah.
today, and I feel like I'm okay with that because we address an awful lot of nitty gritty stuff with people who are experts in fulfilling manufacturing or whatever else, and they're absolutely critical. But I think for me that the strategic or the sort of general, more organic journey, if you like, is actually the unique thing. And so I've really enjoyed exploring that with you today, Adam. It's been fascinating and kind of refreshing that you're not really trying to push your consultancy very much. But I certainly
Yeah.
feel that if anyone's exploring this, particularly if they're British based, they want to sell in America, that particular set of
Mm.
hurdles, and that a lot of
Yeah.
the people in the mastermind and the listeners and watchers are in that situation, they'd be well
Mm.
advised to talk to somebody who's been there and done that, as indeed I guess would be anyone based in the US, right? I presume that US based
Yeah.
folks would also benefit from that as well.
Yes, for sure.
Great. Well,
Great.
look, been quite a marathon. Thank you for being willing to do such a long interview. I just honestly just keeping going because I'm finding just a lot of fascinating stuff here. So if you're listening, watching with us live, obviously video is not a very absorbable way of absorbing a massive long interview like that. So well done for your stamina if you're still here. But if you're listening to the podcast, we'll split it up into various bits because I feel like there's a lot of stuff about the journey of developing a brand, about developing an audience, and lots of things here that are fascinating to go and take away and ponder on. So, lots of food for thought. Adams, thank you so much for coming on. Especially if you don't like podcasts, it's been very kind of you to, being willing to put yourself out in the limelight here, and fascinating stuff. So, thank you so much for coming on live with us.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it. It's been good.
Okay then, folks. So if you're watching this on the replay, you have amazing stamina. Do feel free to put any comments or questions in the chat. If you made it this far of the video, you probably are pretty serious. So you probably ought to consider, apart from the odd question for Adam, maybe just booking a session because you're going to get a lot more detail that way. But for now, I'm just going to say cheerio to our live audience, and thanks, Adam, for a marathon and very, very fascinating stuff.